These little islands, one so like another, allured my fancy, wrote Somerset Maugham, the writer and playwright, about the Malaysia he knew so well. In his stories, he describes the land, the beauty, friendly rather than awe-inspiring of the scene. It had a gaiety like the joyful singing of birds in the trees. In the distance stretched blue mountains, range upon range, as far as the eye could see. There was no sense of confinement nor of gloom, but rather of openness and wide spaces where the exultant fancy could wander with delight. The green glittered in the sunshine, and the sky was blithe and cheerful. The gracious land seemed to offer a smiling welcome. The islands of Langkawi lie to the north of Malaysia, close to her border with Thailand. Here and there among fruit trees were Malay houses on piles, wrote Somerset Maugham. It's much the same today as when he knew it. The marketplace crowded with local people. In this community of little islands, fishing is of course one of the main activities. They catch and sell a great variety, for Malaysians love fish of all sorts. It figures in many of the spicy dishes they eat. Here on Langkawi, they catch a particular little fish called pilis. Thousands of these little creatures are dried in the sun and then shipped all over Malaysia and beyond, for they are considered a great delicacy. The water buffalo still plows the paddy fields in time-honored fashion. Pretty, doll-like girls, Maugham called them, small, shy things with the grace of a flower, plant rice in the same unchanging way. This scene is not typical of all Malaysia. In many regions, they practice very up-to-date farming methods. Nowadays, there is one new feature, a modern hotel on Langkawi. The tourists come to enjoy the scenery and the relaxed charm of this magnificent group of 99 islands. Before the days of the European empires, the country was ruled by local sultans. The Balai Besar, used for royal ceremonies in Alor Star. Penang Island, on Malaysia's west coast, is one of the oldest of the European settlements. The funicular railway takes visitors to the summit of Penang Hill to enjoy the spectacular view. Here there are still to be found comfortable old colonial hotels facing the Malacca Straits, modernized for present-day needs. Outside the towns, Penang is a fascinating tropical paradise. Here grow some of Malaysia's most beautiful plants and trees. The botanical gardens are the home of these little monkeys. In the early morning or towards evening, whole family parties descend to the ground to see what food they can find. Night falls over the golden beaches that fringe the eastern coast of Malaysia. Between May and September, the giant leatherback turtle heaves her great bulk out of the water to lay her eggs in a hole she digs in the sand. Nowadays, government officials collect the eggs of this rare species and hatch them in safety, away from predators. Then, her task over for another year, she goes back into the South China Sea and heads for the depths. It is on the east coast, so they say, that the soul of the country is to be found. Divided from the west coast of Malaysia by a chain of rugged mountains, separated by swamps and rivers, it has retained its identity and character in a modern world. Here, as in many other East Coast areas, many Malaysians live by and from the sea. At the mouth of the Kuantan River, a fishing village built on stilts over the water. It is typical of many. In them, life has pursued its same even harmony for 1,000 years, perhaps longer. By the river, wrote Somerset Maugham, were the native huts, and here, living their immemorial lives, dwelt the Malays. They were busy, but without haste, and you were conscious of a happy, normal activity. There was a sense of the rhythm of life, of which the pattern was birth and death, love, and the affairs common to mankind. Indeed, here in these tranquil, timeless communities is unsophistication in the truest meaning of the word. Almost every East Coast village has its own baboon. They're trained to climb the palm trees and to fetch down coconuts.
Kasih habis. Tak ada. Turun, turun. Dah habis. Habis dah. Turun, turun.
In this region, nearly every family has its own kite, which is almost a symbol of the country. The often exquisite designs are cut from thin, translucent colored paper. It is the East Coast that preserves the culture, the skills and recreations of Malaysia. Many of the traditional arts and crafts it fosters are still flourishing happily. Top spinning is another Malaysian pastime. It may be a child's game in Europe, but here it is a highly skilled sport, taking years to master. The tops are heirlooms. They are very heavy, made with a thick outer band of Malaysian tin to add weight and stability. An expert can make them spin for something like an hour and a half. Silat is the Malaysian art of self-defense. It can be practiced as a ritual dance, but used more seriously, it is a deadly skill, a reminder of those days when every Malay was an accomplished warrior. It is on the east coast, too, that you come across small cottage industries, making the famous batik cloth, for which Malaysia is so well known. Malaysia does not lack for beautiful beaches, for this country has some 3,000 miles of coastline, much of it quite unspoiled. Both east and west coasts boast attractive, accessible beaches with pleasant bays and gentle surf. The water is clear and warm, the sand undisturbed. There is no difficulty in finding a palm-fringed golden beach and having it all to yourself. At some resorts, there are chalets for hire. Others have a range of hotels with excellent restaurants and all the usual facilities. Whoever is Lord of Malacca has his hands on the throat of Venice, wrote a Portuguese seaman adventurer nearly 500 years ago. True enough, for this historic port stood squarely across the Venetian trade route to the fabulous riches of the Orient. In 1511, the Portuguese took Malacca and built a great fort. This gateway is all that remains. Within the fortress walls, in their church of St. Paul's, they buried their dead. By the 17th century, the Dutch had taken over. They rebuilt Malacca in their own style of architecture. Today, in the shadow of the old Dutch town hall, the scribes draft letters for those who can't read or write. A legacy of foreign occupation, the Portuguese colony. They speak archaic Portuguese of nearly 400 years ago. And here, in tropical Malaysia, they manage somehow to live a genuine Iberian lifestyle. Malaysia consists of two elements, the peninsula itself and the states of Sarawak and Sabah in North Borneo. They are closely linked by a network of services run by the Malaysian airline system. Southeast Asia's highest peak, Mount Kinabalu in Sabah, according to legend, haunted by the spirits of the dead. The mountain slopes are now a national park, crisscrossed by tracks much used by walkers and climbers. A round trip to the summit and back will take 2 or 3 days, but there are chalets and camping sites along the trail. Kuching, capital city of Sarawak. For 80 years, this romantic, legendary country was ruled by the Brooks family, the White Rajas of Sarawak. They built their royal residence, the Astana, and Fort Margarita on the opposite bank of the Sarawak River to overlook and protect their city. Somerset Maugham describes the exciting, mysterious land of North Borneo in words that could still be used today. At the mouth of the river was a straggling fisherman's village standing on piles in the water. In the distance, darkly silhouetted against the blue sky, was the rugged outline of a mountain. It grew shallow, and the trees on either side were so close to one another that you only saw a slim strip of sky between. The river grew so strong that the boatman could paddle no longer. and they poled against the current with powerful and magnificent gestures. They slept at a Longhouse, and the Dayak hosts celebrated their visit with arak, eloquence, and a fantastic dance. Tunics, heirlooms of this Longhouse community, are made of antique silver dollars, their value incalculable. The Longhouses of the Dayak are really nothing more than complete villages under one great roof. Separate families have their own quarters, and by custom, certain areas are reserved for the young unmarried men. The daily round of life in a Longhouse. It is hard to imagine scenes more peaceful or domesticated. Harder still to remember that within living memory, these same people were notorious, much feared headhunters. If you're lucky, you may, in the forests of Borneo, find those endearing creatures, the orangutan. Literally translated from the Malay language, orangutan means people of the forest. In the distant past, Longhouse communities would set off downstream to prey on shipping passing through the South China Sea. Evening, inside the Longhouse. The lantern light reveals ancient trophies, a cluster of human skulls, and, lashed to a post, a couple of 19th century brass cannon, prizes perhaps of some long-forgotten sea battle. Malaysia is a Muslim country, but it does offer a home to an assortment of other creeds and religions. Many Buddhist temples have animals associated with them, venerated for their kinship to the fabled creatures of Chinese mythology. These are venomous pit vipers. It is said that the burning incense keeps them half-doped and harmless. They are to be found in a Buddhist temple in Penang. This is the entrance to a Hindu shrine in the Batu caves near Kuala Lumpur. Every one of the rich variety of races in Malaysia has its own place of worship. In this temple is the reclining Buddha, third largest in the world. The Naga serpents, mythical creatures that are supposed to link earth to heaven. Yet another temple, this one belonging to a Chinese clan house. It is the headquarters and place of worship of one particular clan, the Kus. The outer walls are carved and painted to illustrate the legendary exploits and stories of its most famous ancestors. In Kuala Lumpur, the National Mosque, pride of all Malaysia. KL, as it is called, is a kaleidoscope city. Local shops in the shadow of modern blocks. Relics of the British Empire alongside traditional Moorish architecture. There are startling new buildings like the National Museum. Parliament House, set in the Lake Gardens. And the National Monument commemorating Malaysia's victory over the communist guerrillas and her independence. In the cool of the night, the cities come alive once more. You can enjoy a cabaret of traditional Malay dances while dining in style at one of the international hotels. Village audiences are enthralled by the Tok Dalang, the puppeteer who recounts far-off tales of great deeds and noble heroes. Each city street is a lively and animated sideshow in itself. Satay, the national dish of Malaysia and the most popular. When Malaysians talk of eating out, they mean just that. Seafood is plentiful and good. This, then, is Malaysia. It is an exotic land with much to offer, for every turn reveals new facets and fascinating scenes. With its mingling of races, its infinite variety, it is a microcosm of all Southeast Asia. Truly, Malaysia is a magical country.